When I was a youth, I was lucky enough to attend music school. Well, to be exact, I studied music at a college in undergrad, then went to music school for grad school. What did I think of it? Well, I learned a lot. Got a lot of playing opportunities, many of them hard knocks. Got to study with 2 teachers who gave me tools I wouldn't have discovered easily on my own, and met a ton of people, many of whom I played with, many of whom I keep in touch with to this day. So, case closed, right? Introducing music school, click on the link below and tell them Nate sent you. Well, not so fast. Because as I get older and see who's going to music school, how it's marketed, and how much it costs, some nagging doubts creep in. So, is music school worth it? Let's talk about it. I won't say the majority of my subscribers are college-aged people considering going to music school, but it's definitely a vocal minority. And when I meet people in person at clinics or when they seek me out for lessons, 6 times out of 10, they're either already enrolled in music school or considering it. I also won't lie and say anyone's asking me, should I go to music school? More often, they've already decided and they're just interested in how. Or they're moving to New York or Boston to go to music school and they want advice on how to integrate into those scenes. But I contend maybe they should be asking the should I go question. First things first, the aim of this lesson is not to make a case against music school, but it's more that in the zeitgeist, there are already a lot of arguments on the go side of the scale. And I want to make a couple of arguments that maybe go on the other side. Explore the caveats a little. To that end, I want to explore a few things you maybe haven't considered. Like this first question to ask, how expensive is it? In 2019, my alma mater, MSM, costs between $42,000 and $48,000 a year, depending on whether you're getting room and board or a meal package. At the time I was making my decision, that wasn't even really a factor. That's just what music school cost. I didn't have great financial resources, so I did what a lot of students do. I took a loan. It wasn't until I lived in the real world and tried to make a living for a few years that I realized how gargantuan an amount of money that was. Imagine if, instead of music school, you were considering spending that much money on an automobile. And I'll mention one detail that'll be important later. If you've got a full ride scholarship or some kind of work stipend or something that otherwise renders this cost free or nearly free, that changes the calculus a bunch. But we'll get to that. Anyway, I know what you're probably thinking, even if you're not getting a full ride. It's not about how much it costs, it's about whether or not it's worth it. After all, medical school can cost 4x what MSM costs, or more. Ditto a graduate degree in engineering, business, or math, let alone at a brand name school. Which brings us to the next question. Is it worth it? Which is more complicated to answer than you might think. The straightforward question to ask is, how much more money would I earn in a music career after having gone to a brand name music school than if I hadn't? And even that's a slippery one. One good way to get at it might be to ask, what paying gigs require a degree? Straight off, if you're planning to teach at the college level, at least through the traditional career path for those sorts of gigs, a degree will help. I've got friends who graduated from MSM and got teaching gigs at schools elsewhere in the country they would not have gotten so easily without that degree. A fair question to ask is, did they need the brand name, or could they have gotten a degree from somewhere cheaper? As an anecdote, the storefront music school where I taught lessons in New Jersey shortly after I graduated paid $20 an hour to teachers with a degree and only $16 an hour to those without. So there's that. But what about non-teaching gigs? I've done more formal gigs, like playing in off-Broadway pits or playing on the cruise ships, and more informal gigs like playing in my bands and other people's bands and recording sessions. For the cruise ship gig, the degree did help me get to the front of the line, though if I'd had a recommendation, I probably would have gotten there just as quickly. It's also worth mentioning that the salary for that gig was something like $1,600 a month plus room and board. For the informal gigs, you know this, nobody gave a shit. is 50% about how well you can play, 25% about how good a hang you are, and 25% about how much extra attendance your name can coax out of the playbill. And nobody cares where Mark Juliana or Justin Brown went to school. So to the will it increase our earnings over the scenario where we didn't go to music school question, the answer is mostly only if you're doing a college teaching gig. But wait, I can hear you exclaiming again. What about the intrinsic value of a good music education? Let alone the intangible, intrinsic benefits of just being better, and what that means for how much you can eventually earn in your career. There's a rabbit hole. How do you account for all those gains in your skill level, controlling for the scenario in which you didn't go to music school, but still took lessons with the same quality of teacher? Then there's a bridge over that rabbit hole, which is we don't even need to answer that. Because even if I grant you 100% of those claimed benefits, even if I concede that music school will be a transformational, enriching experience that will forever transform your life and impart skills you can't learn anywhere else, there's still the marketing problem. Caveat 3, the marketing problem. In short, how many Subway ads do you see that say, enrich your life with a lifelong relationship with the beauty of music? Or learn the skills to augment the considerable hustle and luck you'll need so that when opportunities do present themselves, you'll have the musical skill. Zero, right? Instead, it's you can live your dream of being a musician and we can help. Or more subversive, are you good enough to make the cut and get into our school? Because if you are, opportunities await. And who can blame them? That's marketing 101. Position your product not for the intrinsic value of the product, but for the deep human yearnings it solves. You wouldn't sell soap by saying it cleans your skin off marginally better than water alone. You'd imply it helps make the user more attractive to the opposite sex. Or the same sex if that's what they're into. The problem comes when the product can't deliver on the promise of the marketing. And as we've discovered, attend our music school as a direct springboard to achieve your dreams is a tall order. It doesn't take much to realize that promise is only true in some rare cases. But wait, what about all the famous people who attended those music schools? And now we come to the final caveat. Caveat 4, opportunity cost. If it's 48 grand to go to MSM, and the reason you're attending is to live your dream as a musician, the question to ask is, of all the ways I could spend that 96 grand, is going to music school the best possible way to realize that dream of becoming a musician? Which, if you add up all the numbers, it's probably not. If I traveled to John Riley's house weekly for lessons, paid people to do sessions with me, paid people to do gigs with me, paid Dave Liebman for composition lessons, and spent every night at Smalls of the Needle, which, by the way, is free, except for the drinks you know you were going to drink either way. In my estimation, it'd be hard to arrive at half that total. But what about if it's free? And now we can speak about the full ride folks. For them, it's a different calculus. Is it worth their time? And when you consider all those elements I just listed for free, I'd say unequivocally yes. If that is, they're sure they want to be a musician. Otherwise, it's still a lot of time. And I have little doubt, having gone through it, that those lessons, ensemble classes, composition lessons, and theory lessons do help you become a better musician. But the question to ask about a Ron Carter or a Walter Smith or an Ambrose is, could they have been just as successful either way? Which leads me to my final point in this admittedly barely scratching the surface analysis. By the way, do you guys want to dig deeper on this? Do you want to hear about some of my anecdotal experiences and funny stories in music school? Leave a comment below if you do. Anyway, all of this analysis would seem to show a glitch in the matrix. Music school has dubious at best value for ensuring you earn more in a music career compared to just studying the stuff on your own. For any career except teaching in college. But it's priced like a moderately expensive trade school. And similarly priced trade schools mostly guarantee gigs. Example. If you want to fly for United Airlines, you can pay a tuition similar to MSM's for what's called an ab initio school, which, if you don't flunk out, will probably land you in a seat at a commuter airline and eventually at the mainline carrier. Dental school, though it's a lot more expensive than music school, does correlate almost one-to-one with lucrative dental careers, for those students who graduate with good grades and recommendations. So why is music school priced so high, if its true value is comparable to what you could get just taking private performance, composition, and maybe theory lessons? If I put on my marketer hat, and a hat tip to Rory Sutherland of Ogilvy, who just wrote a great book called Alchemy that explores a lot of this stuff, here's what I think music school is really doing for people. First, it's a pedigree. Even if employers don't care where you went to school, it proves to you that you've been through the crucible and that you can therefore hang in those rooms. Essentially, it's permission to be a musician. Relatedly, it alleviates doubt that someone else somewhere else is learning something you're not. Which, if you were to do it the other way by just taking private lessons and playing gigs, you might still have some of that doubt. Third, it's a connection engine. With a caveat that that's mostly for people already good, the guys on the full rides. They may meet faculty who can give them a leg up to the paid touring gigs instead of coming up through the freelance circuit like the rest of us. Finally, and this is related to the second point, it gives you some shelter if you're moving to the big city for the first time at age 18, trying to make it as a musician. When I was considering whether to still move to NYC before I knew if I got into MSM, that was a harder sell to my parents and harder to swallow myself. My eventual acceptance letter gave the whole mission an imprimatur of legitimacy. None of which is to disparage either the connections I made in music school or the value of the things I learned there. Hope you enjoyed this one, and as I said, if you want me to delve deeper into this issue with future lessons, just leave me a comment below. See you next time. So leave the wrinkles in. Because as I get older, you notice that there's a fucking fire escape plan right behind my nog. Und now we go to outdoor 3. Ja.